Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into what is essentially a survival guide for navigating massive, complex endeavors. Because let's face it, whether you're launching a brand new software platform, constructing a high-rise building, or completely restructuring a company, the sheer amount of moving parts can feel pretty overwhelming. But as we'll see, it really doesn't have to be.
And that brings us to the ultimate question, right? What actually makes a project succeed or fail? It's a question that honestly haunts every team. Think about it. Every single time we start a new endeavor, there's this constant tension, a built-in uncertainty that can either drive incredible innovation or lead straight to disaster. So how do we actually tame that chaos? Well, I think it helps to start by isolating what a project actually is. Technically speaking, a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And I really want to emphasize those two key words here, temporary and unique. A project isn't your everyday, run-of-the-mill operational work. It has a definite beginning, a definite end, and it involves doing something that has literally never been done quite this way before. That right there is exactly why it requires a specific set of tools to manage. So, to prove we practice what we preach, here's our project plan for today's explainer. We're going to cover the anatomy of a project, the famous triple constraint, time and scheduling, the human element, quality and procurement, and finally, measuring project success. Okay, let's get right to work. All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Project. Before we can manage the nitty-gritty details, we really need to step back and see how projects fit into an organization's overall strategy. You see, there's a really critical difference between project management and project portfolio management. Project management is highly tactical. It's in the weeds asking, are we executing well? Are we on time? Are we hitting the budget? But portfolio management, that looks at things from a strategic altitude. It asks, wait, are we even working on the right projects in the first place? Because think about it. You could flawlessly execute a project, but if it doesn't align with the company's long-term goals, well, you've just efficiently built the completely wrong thing. Moving on to Section 2, the triple constraint. Now, this is the core puzzle every project manager faces every single day. It's basically the ultimate high-stakes juggling act. I like to think of the project manager as an orchestra conductor who has to constantly harmonize three competing restrictions: scope, time, and cost. Here's the catch. If your scope, what you are actually trying to accomplish, suddenly expands, your time and cost are absolutely going to be impacted. You can't just change one variable without the others reacting. It's like squeezing a balloon. If you want a product delivered faster, it's going to cost more, or you might have to slash some features. Balancing this constant push and pull without letting the whole performance fall apart, man, that is the true art of project management. So how do we actually conquer that first constraint, scope? Well, it all starts with what we call a work breakdown structure, or WBS. You have to take these massive, intimidating deliverables and break them down into manageable, bite-sized pieces. To do this, you might use a top-down approach, drilling down from a big executive vision, or you could use a bottom-up approach, gathering every tiny task from the team and rolling them all up. Or honestly, you might just borrow an analogy from a similar past project to save yourself some time. Now, one of the absolute best ways to kickstart a WBS is through mind mapping. Before forcing everything into a strict, rigid spreadsheet, you can visually map out tasks in this really cool, non-linear format. It totally frees up the team's creativity, letting them capture every little deliverable radiating out from the main project core. It's an incredible way to make sure nothing slips through the cracks before you formally lock it into a structure. Okay, Section 3, time and scheduling. So moving from the structural blueprint to the actual clock, we have to figure out how to sequence all this work to avoid really costly delays. The thing is, tasks just do not happen in a vacuum. Understanding task dependencies is absolutely critical here. For example, a finish-to-start dependency means, well, you simply cannot start painting a wall until the drywall is completely finished, right? If you don't map these kinds of dependencies accurately from day one, a delay in one tiny, seemingly insignificant task can cascade uncontrollably through your entire schedule. And once you know how all these tasks depend on each other, you have to ask yourself, okay, with all these moving parts, how do we find the absolute fastest route to the finish line? And that brings us to the mathematical secret weapon of project managers, the critical path method. Look at it this way.
When you have multiple paths from start to finish, say one path takes 16 days and another takes only 9 days, the crucial, kind of counterintuitive point here is that the longest path of dependent tasks actually dictates the shortest possible completion time for the whole project. So in this case, 16 days. If a task on that 16-day critical path gets delayed by even one single day, the entire project is delayed by a day. It literally tells you exactly where you need to focus all your attention.
Which leads us to Section 4, the human element. Because hey, even with perfect charts and absolutely flawless math, projects are ultimately executed by people. And that brings us to our biggest, most unpredictable wild card. The math behind team communication is actually kind of staggering. If you have just 2 people on a team, you have 1 communication channel. Simple. But jump up to 4 people, suddenly you have 6 channels. Add a few more, and the complexity of who needs to talk to whom just grows exponentially. This is exactly why simply throwing more bodies at a late project almost always makes it even later. The sheer communication overhead just crushes the team's productivity. Managing those channels means you have to strike a balance between formal and informal communication. Formal channels, like your scheduled meetings, memos, and status reports, those keep the official record straight. But seriously, do not underestimate informal communication. Those casual conversations by the coffee machine, or just a quick instant message, that's often where crucial trust is built, and it's where massive roadblocks get resolved in literally seconds rather than days.
Moving on to Section 5, quality and procurement. So, as we approach the finish line of our project, we really need to talk about our safety nets. Basically, how do we ensure the product actually works, and how do we get the right external help when we need it?
When it comes to quality management, you're essentially looking at 2 types of costs. First, the cost of conformance. This involves proactive investments, things like training your team, running quality audits, basically making sure you do it right the very first time. On the flip side, the cost of non-conformance is what happens when you don't do that. We're talking reactive rework, scrapped materials, warranty claims, and ultimately devastating damage to your brand's reputation. Trust me, investing upfront in conformance is always cheaper than paying the steep price of failure later on. And speaking of costs, a huge part of procurement management is the classic make or buy decision. Listen, just because your team can build something from scratch doesn't mean they actually should. Sometimes the absolute smartest strategic move a project manager can make is looking at the internal costs and realizing, wow, it is vastly cheaper, faster, and safer to just buy a solution from an external expert. All right, our final section, number 6, measuring project success. We've planned the scope, we've mapped the schedule, and we've managed our people. But how do we actually know if our whole juggling act is working before it's too late to fix it? The gold standard answer here is Earned Value Management, or EVM. Think of EVM as the ultimate health check for your project. It moves us away from vague, gut-feeling guesses like, I think we're about 50% done, and grounds us in hard, integrated data that covers our scope, our timeline, and our budget all at once. Mathematically speaking, you're tracking 3 key things: what you budgeted to do, what you've actually spent so far, and the real value of the work completed to date. By comparing these figures, a project manager can instantly calculate cost and schedule variances. A negative variance? That means you're over budget or behind schedule. But the real power here isn't just crunching the numbers, it's early detection. EVM lets you spot a tiny financial leak and patch it up weeks before it turns into a total budget-destroying flood. So, wrapping things up, project management really is a masterclass in balance. You've got to maintain that high-level strategic vision while meticulously tracking all the tactical, day-to-day dependencies. You have to build out that critical path while simultaneously navigating some pretty complex human communication channels. So, armed with these tools to measure and control scope, time, and cost, I want to leave you with this question. How will you step up and orchestrate the chaos in your next big endeavor? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you can use these insights to go build something incredible.